what I call it is the backside to the solar industry, where, Ford and Tesla and Toyota and Honda, those are all manufacturers of automobiles. That's the front side of this auto industry. But then you have the service centers, the gas stations, the car washes, the auto parts. That's really the backside to the auto industry. So that's really our objective here, is to create support system for homeowners who've gone solar. We were trying to solve like 5 different people's problems simultaneously and sucking at all of them. And so the thing that they really helped us to do is refine into one ICP, one ideal customer profile. And that is like, for us, we decided that home inspectors aligned best with us and that we could help them increase profitability in their business. It's been about generating and targeting, or having a message that does target and scratches the itch of a specific person, because again, they all have something different that they're trying to accomplish. When someone really understands the problem, the solution becomes very, very evident. Making sure that people are problem aware has been definitely like the path to us in getting successful, but making sure that we're helping them understand their problem, because I don't care about my problem. It's meeting them where they're at and making sure that they're understanding like the problem and their solution and how it benefits them.
Welcome back to the Plucky Bamboo Podcast, where we get into the real stories and strategies behind scaling sustainability-focused businesses. Today, I'm joined by Cory Vanderpool, founder of Sprk, a company creating what he calls the backside of the solar industry, the infrastructure that helps energy upgrades actually hold their value at the point of home sale. In this episode, we get into some topics that I love and that don't get nearly enough airtime in sustainability. A few of the things we talk about are why so many founders fail at marketing, and how Cory learned to stop selling to everyone and start solving one clear problem, the dangers of building something useful that no one talks about and how he's finally fixing that, and what it really takes to go from installer to category creator, especially when your customers don't even know they have a problem. If you've ever felt like you're building the right thing but struggling to get traction, this one is for you. It's going to be a great episode. Let's get into it. Hi Cory, thank you very much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Sprk?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris. I'm glad to be here. I started Sprk. I'm the founder of Sprk. Started about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. Came from a place actually of pain. I think a lot of entrepreneurial businesses do, but I came from the solar industry, got about 12 years in the solar industry, started off selling, installing, running operations. Anyways, done several different things, at least on the residential side of things. And I just found that there was a lot of problems that started cropping up around real estate transactions and a clientele canceling because of that. We had a week where 8 of our 10 sales that we had just made that week canceled because of that one reason. They talked to an agent told them to cancel the transaction, and so they did. And we saw more and more issues popping up, but that's what got me into this, is asking that question and also seeing like the solar industry had some challenges. And so I wanted to go in and address some of those in the way that they interact with the real estate industry. And so dove in and started asking questions, and led us to where we are today with Sprk as a company that helps to evaluate and measure solar and energy improvements on a home to be able to add to the real estate transaction and simplify it, make it better, increase home value, that kind of things. Kind of like what you would a Kelley Blue Book for the sale of a car. That's where their Sprk is in the real estate transaction.
Obviously, with a strong background in resi solar, you used to have that company. I'm curious, why did you start Sprk instead of just changing that solar business you already had?
When I got into this, I thought, honestly, that's what we would do. It was a great opportunity. I saw this versus like a business, like, okay, how can I sell more solar, with my company, CR Power? And I've had a couple different companies. I've had one, before that I sold, and I started another called CR Power. But how can we sell more solar? How can we get more glass up on the roof, if you will, as we say in the industry, through this real estate, education, and be able to sell that? And I quickly came to learn, like, I was coming at it from my vantage point rather than my customers. And so the customer being really like the real estate agent, the home inspector, the appraiser, they didn't really need another company out there slinging more solar. What they needed was someone that could step outside of that space and give them the ability to look into that space intelligently and easily. And so really had to like abandon for Sprk the model of just selling to be able to get solar up on the roof, and be really like an authority figure that can clarify and justify, because one of the issues, if you're an appraiser, you really can't be selling a home. And so if in that same way, if we're providing validated third-party data and we're participating in the transactions, then it really distorts the data and comes from a place of bias. And so it forced us to really like change the way we were entering the marketplace and address really the needs of the client and really meet them where they were at. So that's really why we had to start a new organization. But I didn't even get into it. I didn't really want to, start Sprk, but we quickly realized like there was nothing out there like it. And there's some other, documentation services that kind of help with that, but not in the way that like there was a deep analytics happening that could simplify things for the real estate industry.
I'm curious then, if you could wave a magic wand and give every real estate agent one insight about solar homes, what would it be?
Distilling it down to one. I would say that preparation, if it's the listing agent, that preparation is the key. So going into the transaction, the listing with everything ready and presentable and, buyers understanding that. So preparation, helping their client get everything prepped going into it. So that way they enter that listing phase ready. That is probably the number one thing. Definitely the most important step on the buying side, that you really need to make sure that a solar system is fully functional. So kind of there's two sides to that, right? So that buying side, so that way that buyer does not inherit the seller's problems. And so, making sure that systems are vetted for buyers and that sellers, everything is prepared. Those are really the two big things, like vetting and preparing. Those are both sides of the transaction for sure.
You're basically creating a whole new category here. Like, I guess post-installation solar support, that's got to be a hard path creating a category. What's been the hardest part of getting that market adoption? Is it like educating the market, or is it getting them to care about the product?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. It's funny, actually, as I work more with AI and introducing what we're doing and kind of interact with it, that's what, the feedback it says. You're not trying to be a thought leader here. It's actually a whole new category. And the way that I guess I see it is, what I call it is the backside to the solar industry, where Ford and Tesla and Toyota and Honda, those are all manufacturers of automobiles. That's the front side of this auto industry. But then you have the service centers, the gas stations, the car washes, the auto parts. That's really the backside to the auto industry. So that's really our objective here, is to create support system for homeowners who've gone solar, but not just solar, but also energy improvements, because electricity is very expensive. And it would have been so much easier as a business owner if I could have just identified the one little issue that needed to be solved, and we just tweaked one thing, and we could educate and help and support in that one thing. But it turns out that there's 5 major parties involved, and each have their own unique resource and whatnot. And kind of going back to the question of what's the one thing that we can do to help them, really, it's like most of them are like problem unaware. And so it's largely an educational. And I think that's with any new industry, is you got to make sure that everyone is problem aware. Then you can help them know what's solution aware. But as a business owner, you don't have to sell anyone air underwater. You will give anything for air if you're out of air and you're underwater. When someone really understands the problem, the solution becomes very, very evident. And so making sure that people are problem aware has been definitely like the path to us in getting successful, but making sure we're helping them understand their problem, because they don't care about my problem. They don't care about the problems that I have. And so it's meeting them where they're at and making sure that, they're understanding like the problem and their solution and how it benefits them. In all of this, like messaging has always been the hardest thing, is how do we dial in the messaging for the audience to make sure that it's applicable to them? So that way they're able to pick it up where they're at and run with it, instead of having to like move into a whole new space to then capture that. Because if you do that, they don't care. They're going to ignore you.
Yeah, that whole for any viewers watching, that pain aware, problem aware, solution aware is from the Schwartz funnel. And the best way to think about it that I've heard recently was, think about if you've got a car, right, and you have tires. Anyone that goes to get their tires fixed is problem aware. They know they have a problem. They need to get it solved. And then if you were to go door to door and tell people, I've seen your car, your tires look like they're about to wear out, you're probably feeling that they're dragging a bit, they're not braking the same way. That's pain aware, because they know. Pain unaware is if someone's just bought their car for the first time and they have no idea how to look after it. Like, you are wasting your time on those people. Yeah. Exactly. That's where so many people spend their time, and it's just such a waste of time. It's a low leverage piece of work to be doing. Thanks for bringing it up. I think that's a really important thing for people to know about. I'm curious about the messaging then. Home inspectors, buyers, agents, appraisers, they all want different things. So what's been your approach to messaging when you have more than one audience there?
Kick them out, get them out. It's like when you're speaking to a real estate agent and there's an appraiser in the room and you're speaking to the pain points that agents have. And, there's going to be some crossover, but when you start talking to them, the appraiser raises their hand and says, yeah, but what about this? And then it derails the conversation. And similarly, if you're talking to a home inspector and an energy auditor's in the room and you're speaking about things that address their pain points and how to address this, it's like literally the one raising their hand and derailing the conversation. And so ensuring that your audience knows that we're addressing this issue for this audience. And, for other audiences, there's different issues and we will certainly approach those and broach those, but we are talking to this audience about this solution or this problem, because otherwise it really, again, gets confused and it's hard. And that's for us. We still are trying to make sure that if we think about it macro, micro, there is a macro message that it's like solar simplified for ours, right? It's like, how do we simplify solar to make sure that everybody understands really can get there? But the way that you simplify solar for a real estate agent is very different than for a home buyer than for a appraiser, right? And so, those are very different. It's like strategic versus tactical approaches. And so there's definitely always going to be some sort of overarching message. And so that's what we've tried to figure out, is always morphing that. That will be probably something that we continue to adjust and transform the way, at least that we're addressing our addressable market. But the thing that's really helped is I've got a coach for, software development, and the coach is all about marketing. And so the thing that's really helped us was we were trying to solve like 5 different people's problems simultaneously and sucking at all of them. And so the thing that they really helped us to do is refine into one ICP, one ideal customer profile. And that is like, for us, we decided that home inspectors aligned best with us and that we could help them increase profitability in their business. And then in that, we refined and targeted our message, even though it resonates. And it's like, when I put stuff on LinkedIn, for example, like I get flooded with solar people wanting to chime into the conversation. It's like, awesome. I'm glad you want to talk about it. I'm really trying to talk to, home inspectors here in this, but it's, it's like the messaging will resonate with others, in your audience, but definitely getting very specific on who it is that we're trying to target with this messaging to help align with their interests. It's like, if you can't align with their interest, then they're not interested. It's very, critical. And that's as we're a SaaS company for businesses, right? So we serve homeowners through, other professionals. And that's what the route we decided. I wanted, the ultimate beneficiary of our products to be homeowners, home buyers. But I didn't want to have to charge them because they already spent a lot of money. They've already taken significant risk in adding this asset to the home. And so we wanted to find a way to monetize and generate revenue through an audience other than the homeowner themselves. And so it's been about generating and targeting, or having a message that does target and scratches the itch of a specific person, because again, they all have something different that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's a really important piece as well. There's so many companies that try and speak to everyone, they're not end up speaking to anyone at all. Because as you said, like different people have different requirements, they need different things to be said to them. So it sounds like when you sell, you do that. How do you do it when it comes to online marketing, like your web page and stuff like that? Do you just go very top level with the messaging of how you help?
We really are trying to dial that in and figure that out. I've been really good one-on-one sales, and I'm quite good at that. I'm quite good operationally fulfilling, and marketing is one of those things that it's like you really have to have someone that's quite good at that. But at least for our online presence, we do try to distinguish at least between a pro and a homeowner audience and try to provide them what they're after. As far as marketing, in that space, the only really thing I can say is addressing immediately who we're talking to when we do talk to someone. It's home inspectors and then, the message, real estate agents, and then the message. And so it's not like appraiser saying, well, that doesn't address the, asset valuation method that aligns with the way that it's like, dude, we're not talking about that right now. We'll get to that, but we're just talking about how to address this thing when they're marketing the home. So, it's like you always have somebody who wants to raise their hand and say, hey, that's wrong because of my perspective. And it's like, we'll talk about your perspective if you want to, but that's not what we're referring to. So you always are going to run that. There's always going to be the naysayer, the people that say that doesn't apply or whatever, and they're trying to take and filter a message through their own filter. And so stating right up front, who are we speaking to, is just, again, it sounds oversimplified, but that's, at least for us, the best way that we've found to target the audience and make sure that they know, this is for you, not for someone else.
So what's the dream in 12 months for Sprk? And I guess what's the fear if it flops?
Just someone who's out there, probably not super popular in the media right now, but I think about someone who I've idolized as a business person in the space. But Elon Musk, he's asked similar questions. What happens if you fail? And it's like, we won't, because I don't care. I'll keep doing whatever it takes to make it happen. And go back 12 months ago, and you asked me the same question, and we've been through tremendous challenges and whatnot. Like, we went after another addressable market a year ago, which were appraisers initially, to be able to provide them a solution. And it just didn't scratch the itch enough to be able to build a platform behind that. And so we needed to move to a different thing. And so in 12 months, if we're not killing it in the space we're in, we will have pivoted, and I'll find more resources and ways to do that. But for me, this is a lot deeper than just what business can I do? Because if I wanted to make money, if this was about me just monetizing, I would still be putting new solar panels up on people's roofs. There's still great money in that. That is very profitable. I know how to make money doing that. But more importantly is this business serves a very great need that I feel very strongly about. So it's just way more than just what it's going to take revenue wise. But in 12 months, we really are fundamentally trying to ensure that everyone that's going through a real estate transaction that uses electricity can have a positive impact because of this. And so our addressable market, hopefully, is every home that uses electricity around the world. And we're now in the United States and Canada, and we have two, countries that we're working with, but we plan to, expand into other countries to be able to provide, a resource where home buyers and homeowners and those that are involved in the transaction really can benefit from professionals that can easily and simply put out there what is the benefit for them. That value is conveyed, that benefit is understood, because otherwise, if there is no resaleability of a product, and a product is going to last more than one life cycle of a sales, like a home life cycle is 5 to 10 years in a lot of places, maybe up to 20 years, but that panel will last for 50 years. So how do you ensure that value perpetuates? And that you have to have resources there. So for me, it's very important that this technology does perpetuate for lots of reasons. But for us, no matter what, we will still, in some form or another, whether that's we're in 80% of transactions at that point in a year or in 10 years, whatever, we'll find a way to perpetuate, because to me, it matters. As a founder, this is way more than just how it impacts my bank account. It's I feel culpable for some of the issues that are perpetuated in causing problems in real estate transactions. So I feel personally responsible to ensure that those solutions are in place. And so this is way more than just a business to me. This is a movement.
So you've tested a few different models at this point, like direct to consumer, B2B. What's been surprisingly effective for you in terms of getting that early traction?
Asking the question, what are we doing wrong and what can we do better? That, I think, as a ingenuitive mind, my mind is very, very hungry for innovation. I want to change and I want to get better. But I have this answer, I feel like I understand the problem. And usually, what I found is that I understand, maybe, and this sounds bad, as I'm pretty well versed in the problem, but when I get into it, I understand maybe 50% of the problem. And then when I get into the head of the, consumer, then I really start to understand what that solution needs to be. And so what I think is the solution or the process or whatever, maybe I've got a core component, but the way I'm doing it or the way I'm addressing it or the way it's being marketed or whatever, I'm way off. And so that's what I found is that, if Cory is kind of stupid by himself, I'm not very smart by myself, but the more I get my team involved, the more I get other experts involved, the more I get my client involved, and primarily client, of giving me the feedback. How can this be better? How can this be more applicable? That's when we're catching traction. And that's really what's made the big difference for us, is finding a way for this to be more and more useful to them. And the only way that they're going to tell you that is it's humbly approaching it and saying, listen, I don't know what I don't know. If I got mud in my face, I'm not always looking in a mirror. I can't see it. And so help me know what the mud in my face is so I can clean it off and I can make this better for you. That question right there, if that approach to say, listen, I only know what I'm not you, and I'm not in your role. We want to just make this better. Please tell us how to do that. And just almost every conversation I have with someone is, what's wrong? What's wrong with this? What can we improve? And 80% of the time, people will be like, oh, it's fine, it's good, whatever. And they just don't care. But you're going to have a few key people who are using your service that are very vocal or whatever, your product, and they'll like listen to them because sometimes you're just going to get detractors and they're going to try and tear you down. But for us, I found I've got a handful of people that it's like when I implement the changes that they tell me, everybody else is like, whoa, that's awesome. We were hoping you would do that. And it's like, well, when I asked you, didn't tell me that, but a lot of times they're not always thinking that way. So you've got those people who are very good at those analytics to be able to give you the feedback. And so that's for us been the thing that's helped so much is humbly saying what's wrong. Because again, no one creates a perfect product the first time. Don't be in love what it is that you built. Like the first thing we built was a valuation tool. And that valuation tool was good. It was a good base tool. But what people loved the most about our product is something completely different. And I waited 1.5 years after we started to even start building it, which is an inspection tool that shows the condition and the energy output. And now it's by far our most popular product, but it helps like somebody to inspect and show what condition is this system in. From my perspective, that wasn't needed because solar lasts so long and who cares? I'm sure it's in fine condition, but in reality, that's the thing that's like helped us to grow. And I had no idea initially. It was getting that feedback and then listening when they did give the feedback and really altering things to what customers wanted.
If I gave you double your budget tomorrow and you had to spend it purely on growth, where is it you'd place your bets?
Probably on social. Honestly, I think that's probably our biggest opportunity for us as a company right now. And we have way more in the box than anybody knows about. We've got a lot of very product-oriented company. So there's a ton of value behind what we have. And that may not be the case, right? In the beginning, that was not the case. We had way less than what we portrayed. We had some core methodologies that we could prescribe and some core knowledge that we learned. But now we've got all this content and all these tools and resources, but nobody knows about it. And really, you look at Gary Vee and what he's prescribing, and it's like social, I think, is probably one of the best opportunities right now internally. That's what our biggest push is. Because we also too, messaging, it's like I did not want to spend a lot of money on social and ads and the resources to get this, our product and service out there. Thus far, it's just been 100% word of mouth. I definitely could be a lot better in the way that we've initially done marketing, but it's been very good because we haven't put out the wrong message. And so we've worked really hard to figure out what they want to hear and dialing that message. And now that we've really figured that out, now we're investing a lot of money and resources and time and energy into a systematic approach to getting a message out there that does resonate with our ideal customer profile and meeting them where they're at. That's where, the resources that we have and that, we are gaining from the momentum we're getting as a business, that's where it's going back into right now is building a better megaphone to be able to make sure that individuals really can learn about this and utilize it in their businesses and processes and in their transactions.
Let's say you get full adoption in the real estate industry. What does it change? How does that ripple across solar, real estate, even homeowner perception around solar?
Any building that has a weak foundation, will eventually crumble under any kind of pressure or storm. And I think that that's fundamentally, if we've got a product that does last so long, for solar at least, not having the ability to convey that value in the real estate transaction, I feel like is that weak foundation. And for us, that is one of our goals, is to become a foundational unit for the renewable energy industry. Because not just solar, but there's a dozen other really key home energy improvement features that really get credit when they are attributed in a real estate transaction, ensuring that those industries are represented in that valuation. That's our goal. And that's for us, that's what we're hoping to accomplish, is to create stability and value and helping people to understand not just what is the idea of this, but what is the actual perceived value from that to create stability for the industry. Because as a product, solar is ultra unique in that every other mass electrical generation system out there requires something that turns, something that self-destructs. But if you look at solar, it's unique in that it's photovoltaic. It's more like a plant. Protons in the light hit free electrons in the silicon wafer, and that creates electron movement, which creates electricity. And there's no moving parts. And so it's something that will be around for a long time and that can ultimately benefit not only individuals, which is really who I'm all about. I'm sure utility scale solar is great, but I'm all about the individual and impacting and benefiting on their home. But then that rippling out and having, a macro and environmental wide impact. And as more people adopt, I think it gets much better. And so that's our goal, is to create systems that can give a foundation, kind of going back to that, but a foundation that does provide ultimate value to the rest of the industry. And so that way they can build on something stable. United States right now has got about 10% adoption for solar. 10%. So there's 51 million homeowners in the United States, and 5 million, just over 5 million have solar already. So that's good, right? And there's other markets. You look at Germany or you look at Australia, there are other markets that have even more than that. But what's to say that, like in the early 80s, solar water heating that went up, that industry went up and like a rock went down. And that's because there was no backside to it. There's a bunch of federal funding that really launched it and pushed it forward. And then there was no backside to support it, and it completely collapsed. And I think this is a better tech than that. But I just want to make sure that the people that we helped get into this, that we're not just leaving them in a lurch, because in the United States, there's about 350,000 solar homes that sold last year. And if they cumulatively had the same impact that we see so many, and that they're undervalued at least $10,000 to $15,000 in value, that's over $1 billion in lost equity last year alone. So there's significant implications on a macro perspective about what's going on. But there's also, again, those individuals that it's like, can't sell my house, or I lost a buyer, or whatever, can't understand this, can't convey it, that we're really trying to help solve, that not be an issue anymore.
If you had one piece of advice for another sustainability founder, what would it be?
Run. Just kidding. Get out while you can. You look at people who've created core technologies that we use. Just put this in perspective. If in the 80s, you went around and tried to convince everyone that we want you to put a tracking device that listens to every word you say and records every direction, every place you go in your pocket, and carry it with you, there's no way anyone would do it. That would be insane. They would be like, have you read 1984? Like, are you nuts? Now we all do, right? Why? Why do we have these devices in our pockets that listen to and, track us? Because it's become such an amazing technology. No one had to convince anyone to do anything. We all pay thousands of dollars for these dumb little tracking devices, right? But they've become so cool. They've become so awesome. You look at Tesla. Electric vehicles stunk before, they became really great. It just was not awesome. I drive, a Model S. I love my Model S Tesla. It's incredible. Not because it runs off the sun, because I power off the solar, which is really cool, but it's fast, it's, comfortable, it's super innovative. Basically, it's taking and meeting people where they are with these renewable products. I think that is the key. They didn't make electric cars more nerdy, they made them more sexy. And so it's like making something more appealing in the industry. And again, lining ourselves with the interest of the client is 100%. So instead of trying to like change everyone's mind, it's like, where are they at now? And how can I get them to a better place using our product? And so finding a way to align yourself with them and making them want it, instead of like, I don't love the regulations and whatnot or mandates, because that kind of skews the marketplace. But when you have someone who can take something that's like good for the environment or good as a whole, and you can make it sexy, you can make people want it, that's the key. And so it's figuring out not just what do I think my product's so great at doing, but how do we align our product with the interests of the public to make sure that we get adoption. And it's not like something we got to push on people, but it's something that people are banging down your door to get. And that's not easy. And that's why I say, like, it's a very hard thing, and it requires asking a lot of questions and realizing you got to have a humble approach to this. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And so it's finding out, what do people want? Maybe they only like 5% of what you have initially. And so it's remaking it into what they have, as long as you don't abandon your core principles that make your product or your thing. And so I don't know. I think it's those humble questions of what's wrong with this? How can we better? How can we meet the needs? And then finding those early adopters and innovators that will give you that feedback and use it to the point of making it really cool where lots of people want to start using it.
How can people get involved in Sprk? How can they get in touch with you? How can they get involved?
Yeah. So You can always visit our website, sprkhome.com, sprkhome.com. We've got articles, we've got content on there. Like I said, it's ever evolving site. Those that want to get involved, like I said, real estate agents, inspectors, appraisers, that community, absolutely come join us at Sprk to be, a part of the solution, help us to drive the value and solve the issues that they're there. On LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect with you on there. But yeah, we would love to have you there. And like I said, come join our community and help us to really, like I said, fundamentally change the way that these homes are being sold. So that way we can ensure that our industry has longevity and that it perpetuates, because if there's no value there, it's very hard to do that. We want to help make sure that we do value all these energy improvements that everybody's working so hard, to get out there.
Cory, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris. Appreciate it, Chris.